We are about to go on a journey exploring how tiny but powerful forests can transform our cities, restore biodiversity, and offer hope for a sustainable future.
I'm Olivia Fisher-Fox, and I'm primarily a portrait painter. I paint a lot of kids, and this is part of a series of children in the face of climate change and their resilience. So this is called Frontier Boy, and although trees have been with us forever, it's a frontier that still needs to be understood better. We still don't understand how water gets to the top of trees. He's exploring this forest full of mystery in the way that so many children do throughout literature, going into the woods to understand something they don't understand. And he's carrying with him some tools, which consist of this map of how things grow. The Fibonacci progression is an interesting set of numbers that are in nature, in the way pine cones grow and in the way the human body grows. And we're still learning about how it's relevant. Got myself involved with Mothers Out Front, but Mothers Out Front at the time was filled with fantastic LEED certified architects and people who were concentrating and focusing on getting us off of fossil fuels, which is great, and we need that, but it didn't feel like the whole story. It felt like there was this whole other piece about reconnecting with the earth that needed to be part of the conversation and part of the mission. So when I was asked, okay, so you're not an architect, Olivia, what are you going to do? I thought, well, trees. It just seemed so obvious to me that they were what the earth already provided for us to sink the carbon and cool the planet and maintain the biodiversity. So we started a tree team.
When Mothers Out Front was first forming, they were holding house parties, and there was one in Brookline, and there was probably 20 people there, and 5 of us just kind of bought the idea and started Mothers Out Front in Brookline. The appeal to me was it was taking action on climate. It was going to be local, and the appeal of working with all women was kind of like sealed the deal for me. So that's how we started.
My name's Kathy Lola, and when we started Brookline Mothers Out Front with 5 other folks, all of us felt really committed to doing something about the environment that was actionable locally, that we could see results at locally. All of us were very concerned about the environment. We were busy moms and didn't know how we could affect change in the world, and Mothers Out Front offered us an opportunity to do something where we could actually see results. And that's really what the organization here has been focused on, and it's been great to be a part of it.
I'm Gina Crandall. I'm a landscape architect, and I've been a member of Mothers Out Front for about 5 years. I first joined when I saw the gas leak signs that were posted around town next to trees that were growing near gas leaks. And since then, I replaced my oil furnace with a heat pump and my gas stove with an induction stove. And then I heard about mini forests. I was drawn to the Miyawaki method initially because of the density of the planting and bringing native trees and shrubs to the town. I made a little presentation to the tree team talking about the benefits of mini forests to mitigate climate change, the sequestering of carbon, the bringing of native plants into the area. So we took that idea to the town. They were enthusiastic about it, and we planted it last October.
So I first heard about the Miyawaki Forest in 2021 when Cambridge planted their first one. I read about it and I thought, wow, that's really cool. I had just started here in Brookline. I'd only been here a few months. And we were actually wrapping up at the time our urban forest climate resiliency master plan. And so it really was something that I was personally, I guess, interested in and intrigued by. But I also thought, wow, that could really fit in with a lot of the goals that are outlined in this plan. And so then fast forward to 2022, we had wrapped up the plan and we were looking to obviously implement that. And then I was contacted by members of Brookline's Mothers Out Front chapter here. And we started talking about what would this look like in Brookline? How could we do this? The thing that I loved about the mini forest was that we were able to really educate about the benefits of a forest, and particularly in this case, this really densely packed forest. We planted over 500 plants that day, over 30 native species, and we had so many people out there helping, people of all ages, people that wouldn't be involved if we were planting our typical street tree. I would say the thing that I think is really exciting about this project is that we're living in a world where people feel hopeless about climate change. They feel like there's nothing that they can do, that it's just too overwhelming of a problem. And research actually shows that the best way for people to deal with that climate grief and that climate despair is to find a community of people and take action. And so I think what's really inspiring about this project is that it helped people do just that. It helped give people the opportunity to take this very scientific approach to this overwhelming problem and put real solutions in the ground.
Well, one of the ways that the Miyawaki method speeds up the growth of mini forest is by preparing the soil, similar to any garden. But in this case, the soil was amended with biochar and compost to a depth of about 12 inches or more. And then after the trees and shrubs were planted, there was a 4-inch layer of mulch on top to hold in moisture. And on planting day, the trees and shrubs roots were all dipped in compost tea before they were planted.
I've been a composter since I was a child. My father used to take any sort of organic waste from dinner. He would dig a hole in his backyard, when there was enough compost, and bury it.
What Tracy is describing is called the trench method of composting. Trenching is the act of burying your organic waste directly into your garden soil. Karen has composted for about 14 years in her backyard.
We keep our compost bin here. As you can see, I have some pizza boxes that I rip up and put in there for some browns. But I also get some of these wood chips that are untreated wood here. I keep that nearby unless it's raining. And then I just scoop that up and I sprinkle it on. And it also adds the necessary browns to the greens. So there's nitrogen and carbon, and you have to have a good mix and lots of air to make this happen. And then I just cover it and I cover this up. And that's it. It's so easy.
Karen touches on a very important factor when composting. She refers to browns and greens. The ideal carbon to nitrogen ratio for most soil environments is considered to be around 24:1. This means for every 24 parts carbon, there is 1 part nitrogen, which provides a balanced food source for soil microbes to optimally decompose organic matter and release nutrients for plant growth. For optimal composting, a CN ratio of about 30:1 is often recommended, as the decomposing materials will naturally decrease in CN ratio as the carbon is released as carbon dioxide.
I grew up with my family composting. Like, we've composted since I was a baby. So when we bought this house 30 years ago, I had a compost outside, and I've composted ever since. Well, I saw with my own eyes, there was a 3-year cycle of the compost. There were 3 piles, and one was for this year's leaves and food waste. One was last year's, which, you painstakingly take the time to shovel. Speaking of vigorous, vigorously turn over into the year 2 pile. And then after the 2nd year, you turn it over a 3rd year. And it's the 3rd year that it becomes soil. So I witnessed that process growing up and was a part of it every year.
What Kathy is describing is windrows composting, which brings us to production composting. Black Earth is a production composting service that many people in our town use. It is where we purchased the compost for our Miyawaki mini forest planting. We visited Black Earth production site to learn more about this soil amendment. Here we are in Gretton, Massachusetts. This is one of the composting locations for Black Earth. The site is about 3 acres, and on average, it processes 50 tons of compost per week. The goal here is to process all the food waste without an offensive odor. This is the building where all the decomposition processes start. In addition to covering the food waste, the goal is to process the liquid and air in this building. The big pipe draws the air from the building into the pile of wood chips. This pile is constantly being aerated underneath. The building itself holds about 3 weeks' worth of food waste. The food waste is turned, and there are trenches under the building that absorb the liquid. The waste is moved out of the building after 3 weeks and is used to create aerated static piles, or ASPs. As you can see here, Black Earth uses these bouncy house blowers for aeration. These piles heat up to 130 degrees Fahrenheit. This is thermophilic composting. Black Earth processes like to even exceed this temperature to control pathogens. The food scrap pile is then screened in a machine that removes items that will not break down. The machine is called a trommel screener. After screening the material, it is added to the windrows. Eventually, the food scraps are gone. What's left is earth.
My name is Dean Cody. Last few years teaching, I started a whole compost program in Wayland at the public school. Every child from K through 5 got involved. And every child got involved in a school garden. So it was really, really meaningful. And I wanted to bring that to Brookline. So I joined Mothers Out Front about 8 years ago. I have grandchildren who live upstairs from me. I want them to have a livable future. It's very, very disturbing what we've done to our beautiful planet Earth. And so I need to be part of the solution. Mothers Out Front, I helped start one of the teams, one of the campaigns, which is the Zero Waste campaign. And so we have been volunteering in the schools, mostly the high schools, helping the students learn how to sort their waste and all, so that we collect the food waste. And nearly 1 ton of food waste is collected every week, which is a lot of food waste that is not getting incinerated. So we're reducing fossil fuel emissions, and we're being able to use it. So it's enhancing soil, which is terribly depleted around the world.
Our next amendment is biochar. What is biochar? Biochar is a porous carbon substance that helps increase the water holding capacity of soil. Biochar is highly porous and has a very large surface area. It can be used to remediate both soil and water, and it is also long-lasting. Often biochar is made from wood that undergoes pyrolysis. Pyrolysis is the process of heating a biomass like wood without the presence of oxygen. Next step is to inoculate the char. That is, add non-chlorinated water or add the biochar to compost or compost tea. The process of inoculating char transforms it from a hydrophobic to a hydrophilic substance. thus making the char into a water-retentive remedial substance. How do you make compost tea? First, you need a bucket. It's best to start with a 5-gallon bucket. For example, you could use well water or rainwater. Then add a scoop of finished compost to a mesh bag. That is your compost tea bag. Place the bag in the bucket and let it steep for a week, stirring it daily. This is how you brew compost tea. You can also optimize the tea by aerating the brewing process. What we want as a result is optimal microbial activity. You can also add molasses to the brewing process to accelerate the presence of good bacteria and fungi. When the week is up, you strain out the compost to leave behind the nutrient-rich liquid, which can be used as a soil drench for plants. What does a rich forest soil look like? It has a diverse population of beneficial microorganisms like bacteria and fungi that break down organic matter and cycle nutrients. Compost and compost tea provide the microorganisms. Let's listen to David Falk from Garden in the Woods in Framingham, Massachusetts, and Catherine Richardson from the Arnold Arboretum to discuss one of these microorganisms, fungi.
David Falk. And I'm the senior horticulturist here at Garden in the Woods, a small botanical garden, a native plant botanical garden owned by a rare plant conservation organization called Native Plant Trust, and have been using it as a way to educate and create a garden of purely New England plants. Become more and more focused on ecotypic or specifically New England species, and we become pretty strict about it. So there's a lot of our time spent in trying to figure out how not to disturb things, how not to step into beds, how not to cut things back, how to keep the garden attractive and feeling like a garden. And so we actually spend a good amount of time, certain times of the year, just observing and recording. We try to take pictures. We try to identify insects and birds, and really changing the way people are seeing native plants and seeing the importance of our wild landscape.
My name is Catherine Richardson, and I'm a curatorial assistant here at the Arnold Arboretum of Harvard University. Our mission is to grow every tree, shrub, and vine that can tolerate this temperate zone that we're in. We're a global garden, so we're collecting material from across the planet. So our mission is to educate, provide a space, a green space for folks to some forest bathe here, study the different flower types. We have Lilac Sunday, where we bring the community together. I like to think of the Arboretum as a living laboratory because we welcome researchers into the Arboretum. We have folks coming in studying the soil microbiome, fungi. We actually had a new truffle discovered here several years ago. We know mycorrhizae are present based on the fruiting bodies on some of the various fungi that pop up. You'll see mushrooms, and those are like the apples of a fungus, and the spores that fall from them, I think of like the seeds. But some actually form mycorrhizal relationships with the trees. And with 80 to 90% of all plants on the planet having these relationships, we're sure they're there.
Mycorrhizal is a word that can be broken down into myco, meaning fungus, and rhizal is the Latin for root. The leaf litter has been here for decades, and you go rummaging around in those leaves and you will see the mycorrhizal network right there on the surface. The fungus is out in the environment going way further than the plant root can.
So with the mycorrhizal associations, they are attracted to the roots because the roots produce what's called exudates, which is sugars coming out the extra carbon is stored down there, and that is the food for the mycorrhizae, and they are attracted to it. So it is a root to fungus attraction that happens. It'll keep spreading, so it'll go from plant to plant, and then you find this connection happening, right? So one mycorrhizal association with one root will spread. So if there's a plant planted nearby, it will send out mycelium hyphae and be attracted to that. But it's still the same fungus. It's still the same mycorrhizae. And what you have is a chance for it to communicate between the plants and share information. How they do this, I don't know. I hope we find out someday. But we do know there's electrical currents that are present. And there's two types of mycorrhizae. One is endomycorrhizae, and they actually form in the cells of the roots, and that's their little home. And then there's ectomycorrhizae, and that's where you'll see the fruiting bodies, and they are on the outside of the roots. So if you want to see mycorrhizae, you need to look at the roots in the soil on the roots, and you'll see the strands. So it's mycelium. It's like a hair. It's very thin, but it is visible from the naked eye. And they form hyphae, which is they're wrapping around each other. So an indication that you're seeing a fungus is that you're not seeing any green. There's no photosynthesis happening. There's no leaves. And they are usually decomposing if they're not in a relationship with the plant where there's a benefit. If you see a bracket fungi attached to a tree, so a bracket is a fungus that looks like a bracket. And if you look underneath, you may see pores, so all these little circles, or gills, and along those gills or the holes underneath are spores that are going to be released. You wouldn't have the Arnold Arboretum without this association of fungi and insects and animals. I mean, we all need each other.
I think we're seeing a lot of insects struggling to find the plants at the right time. Yes, the science definitely seems to be saying that the best thing for your local pollinator is a local native wild plant.
Climate change has added confusion to the pollinators like insects and birds. The insects are very specific in their quest for native plants. If a leaf or a flower color is not visible at the exact time, then the pollinator might just ignore the plant altogether. ORSA identifies several native plants in our Miyawaki Forest and can tell us if insects, birds, and mammals benefit from these native plants.
Yeah, so my name is Åsa. I work for the town of Brookline. I'm their landscape planner, but mostly that means horticulture. And horticulture means taking care of plants. And I love when I get to plant native plants that belong in the environment, that helps to maintain the ecosystems that are threatened. I got acquainted with gardening for wildlife. So this is a young black cherry, a native cherry tree. It's very young now, but eventually it will get flowers that will be pollinated, and this will result in tiny little black cherries that are crucial for birds and also small mammals. This plant right here, it's called bayberry, northern bayberry. Same here, it's very small, very young, but eventually it will get bluish berries that are very important for migrating birds. They're covered with this fatty or waxy filter that makes them very nutritious for the birds, and they are ripe just about the time when migrating birds need to eat a lot before their long trips. A very young oak tree, and we planted 4 or 5 different kinds of oak. We planted red, black, white, and chestnut oak. There is literally 600 or 700 species of animals, including insects, birds, and mammals, that live off the white oak, the leaves, the acorns. So if you have time and space, the best thing you could do for nature is plant a white oak. So we planted a few elderberries here. And as you know, elderberries have lots of flowers, again, pollinators, that results in black purplish berries that we know are soothing for the throat, and some people take it when they have colds, etc. So elderberry is good for not only the animals but also for the people. Plant called silky or gray dogwood. It's hard to tell because it's so young which one it is, but it's in the dogwood family. We know dogwood trees. There are lots of dogwood shrubs as well. This is so young, so it doesn't have any flowers or berries yet, but this is a fantastic plant for birds, migrating birds again, when they get their berries, or any bird. Sometimes they come before migration, so they're food during the summer. The berries tend to be blue or white. This is cranberry viburnum. So this is a native viburnum plant, and it's so young, so it doesn't have berries yet. But this will get big clusters of beautiful white flowers and then red berries. So the flowers are pollinated by the native pollinators, and this results in berries that the birds will eat. So the last one I wanted to talk about is winterberry holly. So this is a native holly plant, and it's really beautiful because it leaves the red berries in through the winter. For the birds the birds do not migrate. It was a fun project to plant, and we had a lot of volunteers here, a lot of engagement for this little forest.
When planning a Miyawaki forest or any kind of landscape, the site selection is very important. There are several reasons why the team selected the Brookline Avenue playground as the site of our first forest. The playground has lots of foot traffic because it has a wonderful play area for the young children. It has a dog park and lots of open space for sports. It is very near a public transportation station. It is an urban space with lots of neighbours. Also, there is a good water source in the park, which is needed for the first 3 years of the forest's life. The Miyawaki method gets its name from the botanist that developed the method, Akira Miyawaki. He started looking into a process to grow small forests quickly. In the 1970s, he studied the forests at various Buddhist temples. At these temples, he observed that canopy-high trees were growing with trees, subtrees, and shrubs in a random way. You might say in a natural way. He used the concept of potential natural vegetation. Potential natural vegetation is a vegetation cover in equilibrium with climate that would exist at a given location if not impacted by human activities. This is why studying the forests at Buddhist temples was key to designing this method. Temple forests are not subject to human management. These forests maintain themselves. The best maintenance is no maintenance. For our Miyawaki forest, we will water and weed the forest for 3 years. Subsequently, it will be self-maintaining. One of the keys to the Miyawaki process is to select native plants, as we've seen is done in the garden in the woods. David Falk helped Gina, our landscape architect, select the 30 species of plants for our forest. The New England Wetland Plants Nursery provided the seedlings. The New England Wetland Plants Nursery is a wholesale nursery that has been growing plants for wetland remediation and reforestation in the northeastern states for over 25 years. They propagate and grow over 200 different species of native trees, shrubs, grasses, and forbs. Over 95% of the plants grown in their nursery are grown from locally collected seed. Miyawaki forests are designed to grow rapidly, reach maturity faster than traditional forests, and offer significant ecological benefits including increased biodiversity and improved air quality. The faster the trees grow, the more carbon they can sequester. There are several types of measurement for forests depending on what you want to learn or impact. Diameter and height can be used to estimate carbon sequestration, stormwater runoff reduction, and energy cost savings. These are above ground measurements. but we can now also measure a forest underground. To do this, we use machine learning algorithms. Yes, that's right. AI, or artificial intelligence. Most plants on Earth are in symbiosis with mycorrhizal fungi. Mycorrhizae are very good at acquiring nutrients below ground in the soil that they can deliver to the trees, and the trees deliver the carbon exudates to the fungi. In a handful of soil, there are over 100 kilometers of these high-fall threads. Dozens to hundreds of different species of fungi coexist on the root system of a single tree. Satellite data can be processed by a machine learning algorithm to predict areas that are rich in mycorrhizae. The Society for the Protection of Underground Networks is an initiative that's working to map the presence of mycorrhizal fungi around the world while also attempting to identify underground ecosystems where the species are most at threat. Since 2021, a group of scientists have been working with the goal of spreading awareness about the fungi, identifying their locations, and using the data to advocate for their protection. During photosynthesis, the plants feed the carbon to the fungal networks. As a result, these fungi act as repositories of carbon, making them an important tool for carbon sequestration, which mitigates the effects of climate change. According to a study published recently in the journal Current Biology, more than 13 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide moves from plants to mycorrhizal fungi networks every year. That's the equivalent of about 36% of annual fossil fuel emissions. Agricultural expansion, deforestation, and the use of chemical fertilizers poses a threat to this carbon sequestration.
I'm Nathan Freitas. I'm a parent in Brookline. We've lived here about 10 years. From a young age, I've had a relationship to trees, be it our climbing tree in the backyard, redwood forests, and the sort of how you feel dwarfed and not like nothing, in their presence. I was fortunate in that the suburban area I was in still had lots of forest, and Brookline has that. And it's interesting to have this sort of, even though in Brookline, maybe kids are living in an area where the tree outside of their door is not climbable or doesn't speak to them, But if you just walk across the street up off the Muddy River, for instance, in the Emerald Necklace, there's some really great trees in there.
Nathan brings up an interesting point. The Emerald Necklace is a 7-mile circular park designed by Frederick Law Olmsted. He's designed parks all over the United States. The national park dedicated to him is in Brookline, where his home and offices are located. Our first Miyawaki Forest is located across the street from part of the Emerald Necklace, called the Muddy River, as you can see on this historical map.
So I'm Oaks Adkins. I'm a freshman at The Ohio State University. Although I've grown up in Brookline here all my life, I went to Brookline High. My mother's really she's part of a ton of environmental communities, and by living with her, I'm also, I experience a lot of these type of communities. And she was telling me about the Miyawaki Forest. And I thought it was a great idea. It definitely brought together the community. She told me it was going to be a multi-generational project right in an urban area, and it honestly sounded pretty fun. And so I was completely ready to go. And I think that the Miyawaki Forest is, other than the planning aspect, which is definitely hard, no doubt about it, once it's there and implemented, it's actually really easy and it's fun and it's a community builder, and it is beneficial to the environment and to the ecosystem. So I think that Miyawaki Forest as an idea should fully be spread all throughout the country.
A great deal of the work involved in planting a Miyawaki forest is done before the actual planting day. Once the site is selected and before you can actually plant, you need to prepare the soil. The Department of Public Works in Brookline did a magnificent job preparing the site. They also did a great training session for all the planters.
So I really loved Planting Day for the Miyawaki Forest. It totally enlivened me and got me back in touch with parts of my life that I haven't been quite as in touch with. Love that we have that opportunity. It felt so good to be reconnected with the earth in that way. There's something very powerful about that day. There are a bunch of things that I really loved about planting the forest. One was that it was such a community event. There were all kinds of people from all walks of life. There were children there, there were parents there, there were grandparents there. It really felt communal. And I'm also really impressed at how DPW just joined right in and was right there with us. I mean, what a wonderful opportunity for that collaboration. We're so lucky in that. I know myself how much pleasure a forest gives me. I have a very, I would say, special relationship with the woods and the forest and in general. Find a great deal of peace being out in nature. Incredible. Like, I think we should be doing them everywhere. Like every school should have a Miyawaki forest because they're not that big. Every space we have should just be filled with these.
An incredible feeling of joy. We had a beautiful day. The community had come out. It was the culmination of so much hard work by Olivia and Gina and the tree team and the parks department. I just felt such a sense of joy at the fruition of this idea that had been in the works for months and months and months. It's incredibly important for people to be exposed to the forest and trees, because the more disconnected from nature we are, the more we take it for granted and don't appreciate the enormous amount of benefits that we receive from nature. The less connected we are to nature, the less likely we are to preserve it.